narrative. Young, dumb American, arrogant, throwing fists, ripping shit, tearing it, imperative. Then I'm killing this mic no matter where I live. These derelict rappers acting the fool, this embarrassing, is flagrant. That's the nature of this entertainment, and we can't even change it. Guilty before arraignment, now the system tainted. But when we speak, they all laugh at us. And y'all wonder why I'm lacking trust. Trying to fight a giant with attorneys that can back them up. That's church versus science, both sides start acting up. I'm late on my assignment, hopping up a mile high, climbing, obviously never silent. New alignment, I'm defiant, cannot describe it. Used to describe it as the young graffiti artist. Before the beard, I always got carded. At every bar, even though my bar's been the hardest. The scars on my face said I ain't always been the smartest, but I'll show you where my heart is. I said I'll show you where my heart is. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. Even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody will ever see. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. Even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody will ever see. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. I can show you where my...
The type of guy that would ride with the breeze. I'm higher than most people. I'm cold and icicle freeze. I'm liking to Mike Tyson. I'm a bison, a beast. I'm high like Jamaica, like right by the beach. My pops is from a spot where they're fighting for peace. 8 years old, out there watching people fight in the streets. All these sirens only make the violence increase. Yeah, we're still not loving police. It's that bright young American, nice, dumb, arrogant, tight on a mic, but he might need a therapist. Heart full of kerosene, head full of fairy tales. Said that you're my homie, you don't know me, but I know you very well. Roll back on some West Coast shit. This whole track is wetter than your dress code kiss. About to hit the track, running on some retro fit. I guess so lit, I guess so bitch, now let's go.
I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. Even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody...
It's Tuesday. Thank the goodness. Thank the goodness of the goodness, because it's Tuesday. Hanging with the boys, fellas, ladies and gentlemen.
I joined the cool kids club, guys.
Welcome to some sports nonsense and whiskey. Look at this guy stepping his game up, drinking a little whiskey. All right, everybody.
Let's go.
Cheers,
I mean,
guys.
hey,
Cheers to Robert.
Welcome.
You got to do it.
Fellas, sports nonsense and whiskey time. How you doing this evening, Pinky?
Good, buddy. I'll just do a quick plug for Pinky's Whiskey, brought to you, Buffalo Trace, brought to you by Jared Marshall, sponsor for the show. Thanks, Jared.
For Pinky, sponsor for Pinky for the show. This guy over here. Robert, how you doing this evening, my guy?
I'm doing well. It's been an excellent week since we've last chatted. Also, I'm sponsored this evening by Tin Cup. My brother-in-law, Aaron Tucker, decided to hook me up with a bottle, and who knows, that might be making an appearance later on in the shows as we continue on for the few weeks. So we'll keep y'all posted.
Solid.
Tin Cup, Mountain Whiskey.
What you said you had a great week. You got any nonsense you wanna spout out?
Oh man, absolutely. So I'll just get this out of the way. I just finished up Shogun, with the premiere being today, which was excellent. Loved that. Got through one episode out of 2. As I was mentioning you guys earlier, backstage, it is in Japanese for the most part. There is some English here and there. But the cinematography has been excellent. The costumes have been great. The story is very intriguing. I know it's based off of a novel, which I actually have not read. So I'm very interested in getting into that later this year. But that's been excellent.
Is it? I'm assuming it's feudal Japan.
1600. Yep.
Yeah, 1600. Okay.
Yep. But
I can get behind that.
It's been great. Hasn't been. It's been very world setting. There hasn't been a lot of violence or things like that yet. It's been very just this is where we're kind of going. This is what's happening. Osaka is kind of the main stage right now. So I'm really, really enjoying it. So looking forward to that. Finally, yesterday was able to get through the most recent episodes of Bad Batch. Caleb, my man.
I'll get there.
What? So I got through 2 episodes when it first came out last week, and then I just kept running into things that blocked my week up from being able to finish this last episode. And boy, am I pissed about it, because that episode was phenomenal. And without getting into too many spoilers, I respect Dave Filoni and where this is going. As much disdain as I have for the sequels, this is very interesting with how it's being set up. And I will leave it at that.
All right.
And then
All right.
lastly, everyone, Dune, I see it in 2 days, so I will be sharing my review. It's not spoiler free, of course. So that'll be coming. But that's been the week. Been super exciting. So a lot of good things, a lot of great things still coming in the several weeks here. So it's gonna be a good time for nonsense things. I tell you what.
Word, Pinky.
Yeah.
Pinky, you got any?
I've got nothing, man. I had a relaxing weekend. Robert and I did get down on some WWE.
Yes, that we
so
did.
We did watch Elimination Chamber,
Nice.
which was fun. I know the Bronson was supposed to be in it. He was out because he stayed home for the birth of a child, which is good. Congrats to him with the birth of his first child. Not having Brock there is strange, but it was good overall. For the females, man, Tiffany Stratton is going to be the next big thing, which is easy. She's nice to look at, easy look at. She's got some wrestling moves, so that's kind of what I took away from that. Tiffany Stratton and Liv Morgan, beautiful.
Yeah, that was nice.
Robert agrees.
It was great watching. I won't lie. So hey.
And then Nia Jackson. Why am I forgetting her name? Rhea Ripley. Put on a show. Those are some big girls. Big girls. Let me tell you, Nia Jax. I want to say she's my size. She's 6'2". Her thing says 270. She might be a little bit bigger than that, but that is a large individual beating down on anybody. So it was fun.
Yeah, it was definitely a great time. Finally, actually getting to understand some of the history and things that were going on with it. Getting some one-on-one with Pinky on it, so it was great. Looking forward to some of the other WWE experiences coming in the future. So especially with what I think is April 6th and 7th, was it?
Yes, April 6th and 7th is WrestleMania, baby.
Perfect. So there you go. That'll be the next one.
And The Rock will be doing something, I'm sure.
Well, based off of what Cody was throwing there, I wouldn't be surprised. So, Caleb, did you get to watch it at all?
No, I didn't get a chance to see any of it.
You probably didn't miss anything. Again, the Elimination Chamber matches were the best, but
beat up. That was great.
Logan Paul definitely got he got whooped up. That's for sure.
By who?
Was it Kevin Owens? Was that his name?
Kevin Owens put him through.
Yeah, as soon as Logan was the last one to get out of the chamber, and Kevin was basically waiting for him and just ready to pry open his door. And went to town on him, took his face, smashed it in the chamber a few times, and threw him into the other chamber. And you didn't see Logan Paul for a good little bit, actually. There was one point Pinky and I were like, is he still around? Like, where is he? Because he was just in the chamber chilling.
So got a little taste.
So
and it's already out there, so we're not spoiling it. But basically, he got knocked out, and the ring was still open, and he jumped back in and knocked out. God, why am I drawing a blank? Because Drew ended up winning.
Randy Orton.
He knocked out Randy Orton with brass knuckles.
Yeah, he came in last minute and took it out.
Because you can't get
right. Yeah, no DQs.
No DQs in the Elimination Chamber, so he took advantage of that. which is probably good. Randy Orton looked like he messed up his back, man. Like
Yeah,
it
that
was
whole match was pretty bad for him.
Yeah, he's probably done with his issues of injury.
that his back is toast, man. So yeah, that was it. Just spending some time with Robert, shooting the shit. He did get me to watch Dune again. When you're an idiot like I am and somebody explains it to you, it definitely is better the second time when somebody's explaining to you and walking it through. So it was a more enjoyable watch the second time.
Good.
Well,
good.
the fourth time I watched it, because I watched it 3 times on my own. Robert just helped make it a better experience.
Well, I'm happy he could finally get you to the point of appreciation.
All right, let's talk some sports, boys. Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. So are we starting off with coaches here? How are we feeling, boys? What are we wanting to talk about here first?
I think Caleb had some college basketball or
Oh, okay. There you go.
Well, I mean, I think we should at least mention that we're getting towards the last week of the regular season, which means tournaments start for every conference. 60, what is it now? 62, 64 teams get in. Is it 64 now? 68, right?
I think it's 6. But no, I think
there's the play-in games that you can't forget.
It was 64. 64 is the true number, but you get those play-in games. So, whatever that adds up to, then. I love this time of year. I love the tournaments. I love everything that goes with the winning you're in. You could be the worst team in your conference, and if you win your conference championship, you get your bid. I love seeing the big dogs play. There's just so many things that go with this time of year in college basketball. The season ends with the Duke North Carolina rivalry game, right? That's pretty much the last game of the regular season. And then you go into the conference playoffs, conference championship tournaments, and then right into Selection Sunday. So within the next couple of weeks here, we're going to be ramping into that by the middle of March. We're going to start seeing this unfold and the teams be selected and then the tournament starts. So this year in college basketball has been a roller coaster. The way the top 10 teams have lost to teams that they definitely probably shouldn't have.
UConn last week, right?
Dude, you see things like that. Creighton is kind of a perfect example. I think they started in the top 10. I think at one point they were out of the top 25. I think they're back into the top 15. They beat number 1 UConn last week. There's just their season. If you want to go look at what Creighton's done, that pretty much sums up college basketball as a whole. Kansas has had some bad losses. North Carolina, Duke, UConn, like Pinky said. There's a lot of up and down. Houston's had some bad losses. So I don't think there is a definitive team at the top this year, which I love, especially going into the tournament. There's some teams that you can kind of say are going to be the 1 seeds right now. But depending on who wins their conference championships, that could easily change still. There's just nothing that's been solidified by any team at any moment this season. Every time you think somebody might start being able to separate themselves from the pack, they come crashing back down to earth. So I say all that to say keep an eye on these tournaments because they're going to be big deals for that guaranteed slot, that automatic bid in. And then to see where people end up in their tournaments and how they fail or succeed, whether or not they're going to get some of those remaining at-large bids. But this is going to be a fun tournament based on and I don't even want to call it parity, because that sometimes people take that as a negative connotation terminology, if you will.
No,
but
we want that.
Yeah, just the amount of talent that's in college basketball right now. Is making it so we're going to see a lot of really good games, I think. So I'm excited about that. We will talk a lot more in depth once those tournaments start going and you start seeing who's gonna win out. Funny, Pinky's wearing his KU hat and his Nuggets jersey. I'm wearing a Carolina hoodie and my Nuggets hat. So
we know what happened last time KU matched up with Carolina.
It wasn't fun. They had it and they lost it. They had it and they lost it. So, so start paying attention. If you haven't already, now's a good time to really start seeing what those college basketball teams are doing on the men's side. On the women's side, I don't really care who's going to win. Just pay attention and watch Caitlin Clark if you get a chance, because she'll put on a show for you. So that's always fun.
Is she got any more?
I cannot remember her name off the top of my head, and I apologize. But there's a freshman out at USC who's doing some crazy things. And then there's always Paige Buchers out at UConn.
Does Cage have any, Caitlin, does she have any eligibility left?
I think she has a COVID year if she wants it.
She's technically going to take a pay cut if she leaves.
Yeah, not 100% sure on that one, to be honest with you. So I think she has a COVID year left if she wants to use it, but I don't know if she will.
I would.
COVID year.
She's making good money on NIL. Like the Big Ten, the Big Ten women's tournament is like they've already sold out 110,000 tickets or something like that.
Yeah,
for the Big Ten tournament, like for women's basketball, that's huge.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. She wait the longer she wait today. She can only wait so long, but the longer she waits to get to the WNBA, the less likelihood that game has of progressing just a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like they need all the big names and draws they can get right now, especially with them talking expansion. I mean, still being subsidized by the NBA. They need,
she would probably help. She would definitely help.
They need people that can bring in draws, and she's one that should do that. So there's quite a few of them now out there, but some of them are starting to get to the point towards the end of their careers. They need some more young on that young up and coming side. So, but yeah, that's kind of the college basketball, if you will. Just start paying attention because it's going to ramp up really quick.
Plug for KU this year. At least they've played pretty good basketball against the teams, like the good teams, and it's that they've played bad against the teams they should beat. So as long as they make it down the first two games in the tournament, I would feel pretty good because that's when you start playing the better teams, and I think they would be a little bit better at that point. So.
So what I heard is cheers. KU's going to pull a standard KU in the tournament and be out within the first two rounds.
It's possible. I'm not. Cheers. I definitely would not be shocked by that. It's what we do. So, for as good a coach as Bill Self is, somehow he has issues in that first and second round for some reason.
Win championships, or we send everybody home early.
That's how we do.
Word, yo.
All right, baseball. Have you seen my baseball?
Spring training started. Baseball's gonna get kicked off here in about a month. The Dodgers should win based on what they spent, and not just what they spent, but the actual talent that was already on their team, and then what they spent to go add to that talent. Like, not really an excuse for them not to win. I get things can happen, injuries and whatnot, long season, blah, 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 blah. All things equal, there is no reason the Dodgers should not win at all.
They are stacked. Now, I think the Braves will still be competitive against the Dodgers.
The Braves still, they're maybe a 1B. I won't even call them a 2. If you want to call it, you could say this. Because I do think there's a little bit of a separation there just because of what the Dodgers have. Like, it's hard to argue it. I call the Dodgers 1. There's no 1A, and the Braves are 1B. So they're not a 2. I mean, you have to go through the whole alphabet before you even got to 2, right? Like, that's kind of my mindset when I say that. So they're close. There's just a little bit of a gap there with them. On the AL side, I don't even know. Like, the Yankees should be up there. The Astros should be up there. I'm not, maybe Tampa can have another run this season like they love to do. So it'll be
Tampa's an interesting team. Is Franco finished with all that stuff? Should we let this guy in? Should we let this guy in? Should we make him wait?
Franco will never play another
We
game
should.
of Major League Baseball again in his life.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Ooh.
Wander Franco is done. Cam, welcome to the
Cam.
shindig that we are having this wonderful evening. Cheers, my good man. Good to see you.
What's up, boys?
So Wander Franco is done. Like done. Like he's more done than Henry Ruggs.
How does
If
he
that
take
puts things in
another?
perspective for you.
Whoa.
How does he take another at bat in baseball? Honestly,
So,
Ooh.
that's about the most baseball we're going to get into. I will say Yamamoto that the Dodgers signed, the pitcher, by all accounts looks scary good. Like people are like, yeah, dude, definitely worth the money. Like not even a question. And then Ohtani just doing Ohtani things at batting practice, walks in cold, hasn't touched the bat.
He's not pitching this year, right?
Well, he'll start on the IR or what do they call it? The IL now, but he'll be on the long-term IL, probably the 60-day to start the season. It wouldn't surprise me if he plays June 1st-ish as a DH. But he's not pitching this year. There's no way. I'd be amazed if he pitches at all this year.
you're saying Ohtani?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, as far as Yamamoto, maybe that's why the Dodgers kind of pressed a little bit hard for Yamamoto. I think that I mean, I have a tendency to hate the Dodgers obviously for what they do and troll them every once in a while, in the postseason, in the sense of they spend all that money, but they decide to not, advance in the, in the postseason as much. But the Yamamoto decision, I feel like, is going to be one that kind of comes back and really surprises a lot of people in the sense of like how deep they are. Because I mean, like everybody kind of like hated, the idea of like, the Dodgers spent all this money, but like I feel like that's a move that can really solidify things in that rotation. I mean, because obviously Clayton Kershaw's back, and I mean it kind of is what it is at this point with his career, at least in the postseason. But like you put a guy like Yamamoto, like it adds a lot of flexibility with your bullpen to where you can do a lot of different things with that bullpen, especially in the postseason too, because people do a lot of different things in the postseason, which is you see starters work as basically like middle inning relievers, if you will, middle inning relievers. So I can definitely see a possibility where you're working through a lot of different situations once you get to the postseason. So, I mean, it's a big move for them.
Man.
Pinky, any final thoughts on baseball?
I mean, I think the only interesting storyline this year is like who can beat the Dodgers.
The Rockies. No.
We don't talk about the Rockies unless it's to
the Rockies. The Rockies get no airtime on this channel, Robert. Just so
you
you
just
know.
got 1 second. That was it.
Unless it's a straight denunciation.
You won't get a denunciation
such.
from me. I'm a diehard Rockies fan, but I'll leave it at that.
The
So
funniest
I
thing,
mean, if I'm a baseball fan, I'm a Rockies fan, but I'm not going to support obvious nepotism.
the funniest thing though is the Rockies could have a winning series against the Dodgers, but we all know, they're not scratching the surface of the postseason. So they can have a winning season against the Dodgers. But you know what? As long as we have that winning season against the Dodgers, that's like a World Series in our own right there.
Hell yeah.
Gross. That's what the ownership has turned the fandom into. Like the expectation level is like,
It's
well,
sad,
we
yeah.
beat the Dodgers this year, and we get to go to Coors Field, bro. Like, no, dude,
Yeah.
no. That's
I mean,
awful.
It is sad that like that. I mean, not to revert to baseball talk like for too much, but it's just like that's the sad reality that the Rockies kind of find themselves in. Or I should just say like Denver sports is like as a whole, like because like the Coors Field is like, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but it's like it might be the best park in all of Denver sports. But the sad reality of it is There's just a bad product. It's a bad product that you see every single day for like 162 games. And so it's just like, it's so sad that like as great of a stadium as it is, and the longest stadium that they've had, if you will, in Denver sports, that's the product that they roll out for 162 games is it's tragic.
It's really it's real ugly. But
When
a
you
game
don't have
there.
to spend money to make money, some people
We got the
see
rooftop.
that-
We're good.
Hey man, yeah, exactly. Some people see that and say, "This is the life." I'm not a winner. I just got lucky and got a bunch of money, and now I'm just gonna keep raking in more. So,
Right.
oh well. That's enough baseball for now. I'm gonna call that. I'm gonna call that good right now.
Moving on.
Things will come up and we'll discuss later. Pinky, where do you want to go from here, my guy?
It's it's NBA, baby. It's NBA.
Okay, so here's the. I know we did a big rundown of the NBA yesterday or last week, so I won't get too in depth right now. What I will say is, and I don't say this about. I don't say this to be taken lightly. There is greatness in the league right now. I know people complain about lack of defense and it's not what it used to be and that, this, and the other. All right. Like, I get it. Okay. But there's still greatness in this league right now. And whether you dislike LeBron or not, he is at the top of that list. All the way to Jokic, who just passed LeBron on career triple doubles.
It's insane.
Out east to what Jaylen Brown is doing for the Knicks and raising that boat.
Brunson.
What did I say?
You said Brown.
Oh, my bad. I was thinking Celtics. Yeah,
I got your back.
Sorry.
You're good.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Jalen Brunson and what he's doing for the Knicks. And then Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, Holiday, Porzingis, White, the whole crew out in Boston, leading the league right now as far as record goes. So this second half, and it's already started to show itself a little bit, is going to be about who can play. The injuries are really going to be where you start seeing them take effect is now. The second half of the season, the stretch run into the playoffs, is where you see a lot of guys either coming back or going out. So it's something to keep a close eye on with a lot of these teams is can they stay healthy and make a run? That was one of the Nuggets' biggest things last year was their health. Yeah. They were the healthiest they'd been in years, and everybody was able to go, and you saw what that team can do at full strength against other teams at full strength in the league for a change. So I just think you really need to pay attention to health. Obviously, it's something as we move forward the next couple of weeks, we'll keep talking about basketball more and more. But I can't state it enough how important it's going to be, especially for some of these teams at the bottom fighting to get in and some of the teams at the top really trying to keep that home court advantage and stay at home those first couple of rounds.
I'm super, super interested in the Lakers and Warriors for the next 20 games to see if they still, at the end of those 20 games, are still sitting in that play-in range, which they should be. They're most likely going to be in that play-in.
It's going to be really hard for them to dig out of that this year. Based on what's in front of them, it's going to be really hard. That's not just an uphill battle. That's a straight mountain climb. So,
but Lakers, LeBron stays healthy. He's actually stayed pretty healthy this season. They've managed him fairly well. Wouldn't be shocked, they make it their way in and play the Timberwolves or the Thunder and maybe win that first round. Like Greg talked about last week, we wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, they were the 9 seed last year?
I think so.
Didn't they have to play 2 games? So they were the 8 seed and they had to play the 7-8 and lost, and then they had to play the 8-9 to get in or something like that. So it's not like they can't go on a run even if they're in the play-ins. Same for Golden State. So I wouldn't count either one of them out by any means because either one of them could get hot, doing it very differently. But it's still to get out of the play-in range. I don't see that happening for either one of those teams right now. And then the East is just, after you get out of that first 4 to 5, there's not really a whole lot to discuss or talk about because nobody has a legitimate shot after that. So it is kind of what it is out there. There's still a lot of young talent where you could see some of these teams like a la Cleveland finally put that one extra piece together in the Donovan Mitchell to help those young pieces really gel together and take off. Orlando's kind of in that spot. So while they may not be ready yet, the next couple of years for the East are going to be interesting because you could see some really good talent on that side of the bracket finally and really start competing at a much more competitive level.
Maybe if I take off my hat, KU will rally. Let's see.
Hopefully not. Right? I think we can all agree on that. Hopefully not.
I mean, yeah, I'm on the board with that, Caleb.
I think the important thing is you have to rub your bald head. I mean, that's the sign of good. That's the sign of good luck. You got to rub your bald head.
Yeah,
at least that.
Not gonna happen.
I was gonna say at least that's what it was in baseball because like in baseball it was either you put the rally cap on or you shake your hat to mess with the pitcher. So that was like the two things we would do basically in the dugout.
The baseball unwritten rules and their superstitions and the history of that game is just wild.
Yeah,
just crazy.
Yeah, putting gum on someone's like hat in a clubhouse, like the superstition is. You think superstition is bad for like basketball players or football players?
Really bad for.
It's really bad for baseball.
Baseball, absolutely. Anything NBA? Robert, have you learned anything about the NBA this week?
Other than the field goal talk from last week, nope.
What is the NBA, Robert?
Sure.
It's got.
I mean, I know the answer. I'm just trying to think of a smart ass comment, and I'm just not succeeding.
He's still thinking about Dune on Thursday.
Who wouldn't?
Dude.
Stop hating. Who wouldn't? Seriously.
I'm not hating. I'm just saying he's an adult and he took off 2 days to go watch it.
Dude.
No, I didn't take off 2 days. All right, the Friday I'm actually spending the whole day with my niece, so we're doing a whole thing.
I mean, Pinky, if we're being honest about situations, haven't you taken off days to go get stuff signed?
I mean, yeah, I get to keep those forever.
I mean,
that's
like,
a memory I get to
really
keep forever.
different
That's an
than somebody
experience,
going to see,
Pinky.
like, I'm just saying, like, you want to talk grown man stuff? Let's just talk about, like, isn't that kind of the point of being a grown man is being able to kind of do some of the things you want to do when you want to do them?
I don't have little children I'm responsible for other than my niece and nephew that I claim on the days that I choose to. I love them, but I don't always spend time with them. So on the days I claim them, then, okay, I'm a responsible adult. But I'm a 27-year-old that has no other responsibilities, and I'm going to go and use my time wisely and go see Dune.
Yeah,
I'm just hating, Robert. It's fine. I'm just hating.
He's going to use his time wisely, and he's going to go see Dune. Now apologize to the man, and let's move on.
Yeah.
I don't know. I gave him homework to learn something about the NBA, and he came back with zilch.
I know that is. That's,
hey, we ended up doing WWE stuff instead, and I learned more about that, so I traded.
I mean,
I guess that's fair.
And I had homework for a topic that's coming later, so I did a lot this week. Okay.
Penny, I mean, Pinky, he's got a lot of ground to cover, so give the man some points wherever he can find some. Right?
Give him some grace.
Jeez.
Gosh, even Cam's coming to your support, Robert. Damn.
Robert's the GOAT, for real. Oh, did you not read my comment like a few minutes earlier?
I mean, the research you already had him trying to do for one of the topics tonight is enough. I mean, then you wanted him to do.
I'm ready.
I
came prepared.
Wrestling, like, gosh dang, kid.
All right, well, lead us in, Robert. Tell us about that topic.
Oh, we're gonna go right into that right now. Okay. Well, was there any other sports?
Pinky, these transitions are just worthless.
I was about to say. So
there's no rule.
We just move, boys. We just move.
Was there anything else we needed to cover sports world-wise before we just move into the rest of the topics for the evening here?
Hockey will be coming. Our boy Cody, we'll have him on here. I don't want to say the next couple of weeks, but within the next month for sure, he'll be on to talk some hockey, kind of get us some thoughts going towards the playoff push. And golf, Masters is coming up here in a little
April.
over a month. Little over a month, we got the Masters coming up. So there are some good things. NASCAR's big race, the Daytona 500, happened 2 weekends ago, and I feel terrible that I didn't even mention that it was going to be on. It was a great race.
It's NASCAR. It's totally cool.
It was a great race. And then this past weekend, they had a 3-way finish that was 0.03 seconds of separation to decide the winner.
That was cool. I saw something on Twitter the other day.
Finish.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was gonna say. Like, I saw someone on Twitter the other day, like, post like the screen grab from that movie, like, you know, like basically like this is the exact finish. Yeah,
That's what it was. That's exactly what it was.
I don't watch much NASCAR, but the highlights I do watch, I'm like, man, that's fucking awesome. Like,
I think the F1.
Yeah.
The
do you
video
even watch
game
F1
turn from a couple of years ago.
Do you even watch it, or do you just sit back and go, nah, I watch F1?
If it comes on Sports Center, yeah, sure.
All right,
Hamilton
so you don't watch it.
Ferrari,
That's what you're telling me. You don't
Hamilton
watch.
to Ferrari, that was wild.
So here's what I've learned about F1 after trying to get into it over the last 4 to 5 years or so. It's really about qualifying. The race, like once qualifying's set and the race happens, it's very rare that you really see any movement at the top. Just partly based on the way the courses are set up and the way the cars are set up, you don't really see passing like you do in NASCAR. So it's really about that qualifying and pole position and things of that nature when it comes to F1. Indy is a little bit more of a hybrid between F1 and NASCAR. So Indy racing kind of sits in the middle of the two. And then NASCAR is just a bump and run, man. Let's just go. And I love it. But all of them I've learned, and this is why I've really started getting into auto racing as a whole, is learning that it really is more than just hit the gas and go. There is a serious chess match going on at all times. And one of the things I love most about NASCAR is when you really learn that those dudes are on their radio talking to other drivers to form up for drifting or some bumping, maneuvering coming out of pits and things of that nature. They're constantly trying to readjust their positions with help from other people and seeing who they can partner up with at that moment to give them the best advantage. And it's one of those things where it's like both people have to feel it's a win-win, you know, for those things to even happen. And somebody's always going to come out on the short end of that stick, and then how they recover from it. So that's something I've really learned about the sports. And really, I love that chess match, which I find in baseball and football and basketball and everything. Once you kind of learn that, if you see it at least, I'm not saying everybody will see it that way, and I get it, but that's how I see it. And that's what finally made it really starting to get interesting for me.
You know, it's funny. You see the famous skit all the time with Jeff Dunham and Bubba J. Like when Bubba J goes, "Oh, you know, watching NASCAR and another left turn, another left turn, or another left turn."
Come back
in
10 minutes.
Right. But you know, it's funny. I feel like NASCAR, or really even F1 for that matter, I feel like that is one that, like, if I'm in person and I'm watching that event, and I'm sitting down and watching that event like in person, that's one where, like, at that moment, okay, I'll be like immersed into the thing, and then at that point I'll be like probably a NASCAR fan at that point. So like I feel like it's going to be a little bit harder for me, like, you know, at this point, you know, to maybe be immersed a little bit into like NASCAR or maybe even like F1. So that's the thing for me, is like for NASCAR, like I feel like I have to be there like on the ground, like on the Daytona like 500 like event for, you know, for me to like maybe finally convert to the possibility of actually being a NASCAR fan. You know what I mean?
Daytona 500's on my bucket list. Them grandstands, I think, seat like 270,000.
Yeah,
I think is what it is. Like it's absurd. Like it's wild, man.
Well, you know what's funny? You know what's funny is I actually, funny was the wrong word, but it's like when we were in Ireland and Scotland, one of the things that I was actually so unfortunate was, and I don't know if you guys know about this, but there's this thing called a tourist trophy, which is a lot of people call it maybe one of the fastest races, if not the fastest race in all the world. And it's basically a motorcycle race.
I do. Yeah.
And
I've heard of this.
and it happens in where were we? It was Ullapool, is where we were. It was Ullapool, and when we were there at Ullapool, they were just starting the races, so like they were prepping, they were like like getting the races ready, if you will. So like I don't know, like I feel like had we stayed a little bit like longer, like a couple days longer, and we were there for like the beginning of the race, I feel like at that point it's like there's nothing to go back from. Like once you're there, and you're literally experiencing it overseas, and you're like it's almost like, I don't mean to use this as a weird experience, but it's just like if you were like in Cars 3 or Cars 2, when they're going to the different races that are like, and they're going to the different races. They're going to like to Italy, and they're going to like, like England, or they're going to like all these different places. I feel like, once you're there and you're immersed yourself like into that, there's no going back from that. Like you're immediately like a tourist trophy fan, or you're like or you're a NASCAR fan. Like, once you're there, like in the first day, you're an immediate fan, 100%.
That's well said. That was a good like circle back to where we started there.
Yeah.
We're good. That's all sports for now.
Perfect. Well, let's I guess get into the NFL side of things.
Sadly.
Yeah.
Lead us in, Robert.
So Cam, one of the few topics that we were going to be talking about this week is just top 10 NFL coaches of all time.
All time.
So obviously that took a little bit of work on my side because I have relatively new knowledge, so I need to do some research and go back a little bit and formulate. So I put together a list too. So we can all go through it. I'll give my list and I'll let everybody give theirs, and we can all discuss. So with my research here, this is in no particular order. I just want to specify that clearly. I had Tony Dungy on there, John Madden, Mike Shanahan, Jimmy Johnson.
You said no particular order, right?
Yeah, no particular order. Jimmy Johnson, Bill Belichick, Andy Reid, Vince Lombardi, of course, Mike Tomlin, George Halas, and Bill Walsh. Those are my 10.
Give it one more time.
All right. Tony Dungy, John Madden, Mike Shanahan, Jimmy Johnson, Bill Belichick, Andy Reid, Vince Lombardi, Mike Tomlin, George Halas, and Bill Walsh.
Okay.
So here's how I think we should do this. Give a quick thought on the list, and then we move to the next person, and then we can start dissecting after that. But we should get everything out in the open before we really start dissecting. So my quick thought for Roberts is Dungy is interesting, and Jimmy Johnson is interesting to me. Jimmy, I don't think had enough time. That was the initial thought. I understand where you're coming from, but my initial thought when I heard Jimmy Johnson was time. And I'm not always a big believer in time, but we'll dissect later. Obviously, that was just my initial thought. Pinky.
I do not think Tony Dungy should be in that list at all. Is he a great man? Is he a great? I don't want to go like leader of men, but I feel like all of his players loved him, respected him, and enjoyed playing for him. But I don't know if he was like one of the greatest coaches of all time. I think Mike Tomlin is a hell of a good coach, but I think that's just a good organization, and I think he's getting a lot of credit for one Super Bowl win.
Easy. We're not trying to dissect. Just some quick initial thoughts.
So those are the two. Those two kind of stand out to me. Of like, I don't know how they made that list. Just saying.
Understood.
What makes these lists great is they're subjective.
Right. And so something about those two guys stood out to Robert that said, hey, and again, he's much younger than I am for sure. I mean, I've got a kid that's only 5 years younger than Robert, and so
You're
I've
probably
seen
turning in
football.
there, and you're probably turning in your 70s. So I mean,
Probably. I mean, but I feel like I'm young at heart. Cam, I'm young at heart.
That's what counts, Pinky. So don't let Cam
So
take that away.
I feel like you've watched Mike Tomlin, you've watched Tony Dungy, so it makes sense that they would be on your list.
Okay. Pinky, your list.
I'm going last.
No, go ahead. You just go.
can't.
Well, my list is the best, so I don't know why. Okay.
You
wanna
literally
hear it
gave
first?
commentary about Robert, so you might as well just give
Yeah, let's
commentary.
go.
So I did put mine in order, and I've got.
You ordered it. Okay.
I ordered it. That's the way to do it. I've got Bill Belichick, Vince Lombardi, Bill Walsh, Andy Reid, Don Shula, Tom Landry, Chuck Noll, Mike Shanahan, Bill Parcells, and Don Coryell, with honorable mentions of Joe Gibbs, Paul Brown, and Marv Levy are my honorable mentions that did not make the cut. And I'd probably throw Marty in there too as the honorable mention. He should be. He's at least in the top 15 to 20.
You named 14 people. And you go, I'll throw Marty in there. He's easily in the top 15 to 20.
I gotta give Marty a shout out. I always thought Marty was a good coach.
Oh my goodness.
Caleb.
I love you, my guy. I think, if we're gonna nitpick your order, there are some things that I would move around. I think Shula down at 4. I'll love to hear the 5. My bad, 5.
5.
I'll love to hear the explanation for that. I like including Reed. Was Reed at 4 then?
Reed was at 4.
Reed was at 4. I like including Reed there. So I don't hate your list. I think when we start really going through the order, I'll disagree with some of the placements there, but solid. Robert?
Sorry, I had to get a quick bite. Apologize. I think that with the knowledge and the research that I put into this over the last week, those are a lot of names that came up on my side as well. But again, like Pinky said, there's a lot of people that I grew up with that make my list that I've just come to know. So I'm actually very curious to see what Pinky has to say and where he comes from on a lot of those names, because we didn't have a lot of repeating. So I'm very interested to see where his take goes.
So yeah,
Cam, what do you think about that list, Cam?
I mean, as I said before, it's pretty subjective. I mean, it's what Caleb, feels, or if it's even what you feel as far as like who are the top, head coaches, in the top head coaches. I feel like it's just open to interpretation. I mean, even for Robert, like it's open to interpretation as far as like what we feel, or who we feel are some of like the best coaches of all time, right? Like, because I think the important thing that if we're going to even label a distinction on this is that you can still be in the NFL Hall of Fame. You can still be in Canton, but you can't necessarily be considered maybe the greatest head coach of all time, right? Or, so I mean, like that's an important distinction. I mean, like, is that like even, for our sake, it's like, for instance, like for Robert, like Mike Tomlin probably at some point will be inducted into the, into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Like he is going to be in Canton, but I don't necessarily know if he's going to end up being in the top 10 as far as, some of the, the top 10 best coaches of all time. But I think the important distinction that we can respectfully say for a guy like that is that like he is well regarded as one of the best head coaches of all time. And I think that like that's one of the important things that we can probably say is like he may not be 10, but he is certainly well qualified to be at least entering the conversation or honorable mention, or at least, have someone like, Robert, like actually put him in the conversation because he does at least deserves the consideration, to be in that top 10. So
Caleb's speechless.
I'm just waiting to hear what everybody's thoughts were. That's all. That was the idea here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Caleb's trying to play the pacifist card. Caleb, now I think that is a segue to your list, sir. So let's get it over with.
All right, I've got.
And is this an order or no particular order? Or are you going to put it in
It's
order?
just the top 10 guys with a couple honorable
I
mentions.
kind of like how Robert did it and Pinky did it, like no particular order.
Pinky went down in order.
Pinky went
had
down
an
in order. He had it
Yeah.
ranked.
Pinky ranked it. I did not.
What a loser.
The more I tried to rank it, the more I kept coming up with different reasons why I could put guys at different spots.
Yeah.
And I could add 10 different rankings. So I just threw the 10. So no particular order. Madden, Shanahan Sr., Reed, Tomlin,
Respect.
Shula, Belichick, Lombardi, Walsh, Brown, and Gibbs. Honorable mention: Landry, Knoll, Hollis, and Parcells.
See, I don't think there's a wrong answer even on that one, because it's just like,
Which our lists are pretty similar.
Yeah.
Just I've got my honorable mentions are guys that you put in the top 10. Like
did you put Shanahan in there? I don't know if you put Shanahan.
I had
in
Shanahan
there.
at 8.
At 8? Okay, man.
And that's primarily his success plus his coaching tree.
Yeah.
And his coaching tree, when you add that in, is, and I mean, a majority of the current successful coaches right now fall under, Shanahan's coaching tree.
Oh, 1,000%. There's a famous meme that I think even came out that, I mean, and it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when Bobby Slowick gets hired. But it's like, there's a famous meme that came out like, where like all 4 members of like his staff in Washington are like all members at some point. That's like a head coach in the NFL or something. Like, it's a ridiculous meme that's out there. But yeah, so I mean, the fact that even Mike Shanahan is considered for the top 10, I mean, one, he should be in the NFL Hall of Fame. We need to stop pussyfooting around and, enshrine him into the.
I still don't see how Cowher, Johnson, and Dungy got in before Shanahan. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
It kind of is what it is at this point. But the point is, like, he needs to get in. I mean, Shanahan needs to get in, and I'm sure his time will come. But I mean, like, I like the list.
You weren't here on my Super Bowl storytelling episode, Cam, but I actually ran into him in Vegas.
Nice.
In Aria. We were switching hotels from Aria to Bellagio. I had all my suitcases with me, and I'm walking with my wife, and it's like 9 a.m. And I'm like, Mike Shanahan. And you could see he was walking in like coffee in his hand. He was just like, someone said my name. Like, someone recognized me.
Yeah.
And my wife was like, and I was like, all I could say was go Broncos, showed him my tattoo. And I was like, hey man, good luck this weekend. I hope the 49ers win. He was like, awesome, man. Congrats, go Broncos. And then my wife was like, you didn't ask for a picture. I didn't ask for a picture, and he was gone. I was just like, oh.
Yeah, it's funny. I have Mike Shanahan's autograph, but my biggest regret was we were at Earl's, and it's the Earl's that's over off of Park Meadows, right? Or in Park Meadows. So I met Shanahan there, and the dummy in me said that my favorite Super Bowl was Super Bowl 33, because he asked me, he said, what was your favorite Super Bowl? And I said, oh, it was Super Bowl 33. I did say Super Bowl 32, and I know that that's my favorite Super Bowl, but I was just so, Twitter-pated and shocked in the whole moment that I'm literally standing there in front of, Mike Shanahan that I should have just been like, oh, it's clearly Super Bowl 32, literally your first Super Bowl that you ever won, So it's just like, but I'm at least thankful that I, got his autograph. And, the funniest thing is I got his autograph like on a business card, like a Lockheed Martin, business card.
Solid.
Yeah.
I love it.
Whatever it takes.
Well, exactly. And Caleb will appreciate this, but it's just like when I was in Nebraska and I went to the Haymark Augusta, not the Augusta, but like the Haymark, the Augusta golf course down there. And I want to say it's Lincoln or Omaha. I think it's Lincoln or something, but like the course there, Tom Osborne was there. And the only thing that I had on my disposal, in my disposal, was my scorecard. And so of all the things that Osborne signs is my scorecard. So of course, two of the most famous signings that I have that are coaches are people that are signing a freaking business card and a scorecard.
Tom Osborne's face as he's signing Cam's scorecard.
This guy
He's
can't
like-
shoot at all.
Like what is you want me to sign this scorecard after you just shot like a 116?
Well,
No.
I mean, that was kind of funny. Like, I love the video of Puka at the Pro Bowl. Someone was trying to get him to sign, I think it was like a Deebo Samuel jersey or something. And he goes to pretend like he's signing it, but he doesn't actually sign it and walks away.
Yeah.
I was like, the
All
weird,
right,
there's
we're
weird
getting
things
off
that
topic.
people.
We're getting off topic.
Yeah.
All right, we're talking
Easy.
autographs. It's fine,
Easy.
Caleb.
I know,
All right.
but easy. I want to know, Robert. First, let's start with Tony Dungy. What has you with him in the top 10?
So Tony Dungy for me has been always somebody that's been around NFL conversations until recently, I will say, just with you guys. But it's always been a coach that's at, when he was coaching, the Colts were doing this, and a lot of people borrowed from this and did that and were successful. And just with a lot of what he did and a lot of the respect that he commanded from his players, I mean, specifically Peyton Manning for one,
Pierce.
was, yeah, absolutely, is just tremendous. And you don't see a lot of that in a coach anymore, I'll say.
Yeah.
It's just he's still in the game, still is, reporting on and things like that. But even when he was still playing, he always had that commanding presence to him. And for when he did go to the Super Bowl in 41 and things like that, and won it, he was very well composed man, and I felt like he deserved it at that point. And I just felt like that really solidified him as one of the greatest coaches. Which is why for me he makes it into the top 10. It's just he's still very relevant. He's around all the time, and there's still a lot of people that respect him, both retired and still active. So it's just something for me that he's always stuck out as one of the big staples as a coach.
I love that. What was the other one that I'm drawing a blank that caught me off guard a little bit? You had one more.
Tomlin.
Yeah. No, Tomlin wasn't me. That was Pinky. What was?
Okay. I had Jimmy Johnson on here.
Yeah, Jimmy Johnson was the other one that.
Okay.
And only because he coached, I think it was a total of 5 years.
Well, he had 5 years in Dallas, and then he had a few years in Miami.
A few years in Miami. We don't talk about Miami. But so I completely understand why you got him on there. You win 3. Well, he won 2 Super Bowls, right?
Two
He had
Super Bowls, 6 playoffs.
2 Super Bowls.
He was
6
the
playoff
GM too.
appearances in 9 seasons. So, I mean, in 9 seasons, 2/3 of the time, you're bringing it home. I mean,
Right.
You're
He
going
changed
to
the way people look at the draft. If you want to look at it from a historical
The
perspective,
point system.
That's what I'm
is
saying. He
from
completely
Jimmy.
changed the way people look at the draft, the way picks are handled, trades, and things of that nature. So I don't hate it. It was somebody I had thought about, but his shortness, I don't know why that held me back, because it shouldn't, because time doesn't really bother me ever. So the more I think about it, the more I really like Jimmy Johnson being in your top 10. Then I have to start thinking about who do I move out. And I've got some ideas who I would move out. But as we talk about it, as you say those things, I like the inclusion there. Tony Dungy, I think there's a case for him being, maybe top 20. I think he's a really
Top
good coach.
15.
You want to say top 15? I'm not going to hate on that either.
Yeah.
I could see top 10 if we want to talk about only modern coaches. But part of the reason I've got some of those older guys in is because what they contributed to the game and the impact they made to the game itself in a serious manner that moved the game forward. So I think that is hard to not give credence to. And I don't think Tony Dungy ever really did that. He was just a really good dude who everybody knew was a really good dude and went about his business at a high IQ. And it got him, some wins. So, but I understand where you're coming from with that. Pinky, Shula at 4. 5. Give me a reason. I mean,
he's got the most career wins of all time at the moment.
Right.
His career in the 70s and 80s is pretty damn good. If you look at what he did in the 70s and 80s. Yeah. Now, I couldn't put him in, like some people had him in the top 3, but based on kind of feel like he wasted Dan Marino's career, only getting to 1 Super Bowl, never building a team. Again, the 80s before free agency, things are a little bit different. You got to draft really well, back in the 80s. They just didn't do it. They just didn't get over the hump. But I still think, and again, this is where could I move Shula behind Landry and Knoll? I could. But Shula's got 3 Super Bowls. So
maybe you're surprised. I'm actually surprised you don't have him in your top 3. Not that I think he should be lower. If you're going to put a ranking on it, I was surprised.
So
top 3.
So here's the thing: the top 3 is Belichick, Lombardi, and Walsh. Belichick has 9 Super Bowls, 8 Super Bowls. He's been to like 12 or something astronomical that he's been to. So him at 1 is easy. Lombardi, the mystique, what he created. The guy was a damn good coach, and it showed. Bill Walsh is now he took a lot from earlier guys before him, Paul Brown, and then he also took a lot from Don Coryell, but he really moved the passing game forward. And Bill Walsh's coaching
is still used to this day. Absolutely.
Bill Walsh's coaching tree is pretty crazy too when you look at it. So that's why he's up there. And so that's why I couldn't put Shula in. Like if you look at Shula, I just feel like career wins, longevity. He did get 3 Super Bowls, even though they were all in the 70s.
What puts Reed over him?
So Reed, to me, is doing something in the modern era that's really hard to do, creating that dynasty in the modern era. And even in Philly, most of his teams until towards the end of his tenure there were damn good Philly teams. That guy's been a really good coach since he became a coach for Philly. His run in Philly was great. He was winning. He won division titles before Mahomes. Yep. Right? Alex Smith could only take you so far. And the rest of the team wasn't great at that point when they were doing that. And then they get Mahomes and it's like a whole different stratosphere. To think about, and again, how did they win last year or this most recent Super Bowl? They had the worst receiving core that I can remember in Super Bowl history minus Kelsey. I think maybe one of the Patriots' early Super Bowls may have had a similar like Deion Branch and guys that you're just I don't really know who these guys are.
Either one of the Giants Super Bowls, either one of the Seattle runs. There's some bad Baltimore. I can think of some really bad wide receiver cores that went to the Super Bowl.
But I would say they're in the conversation.
That's fair.
And they got it done, right? And they played some of their best football offensively in the playoffs. So that's where, and maybe it's a little bit of recency bias by having Andy Reid that high, but I like Big Red a lot, and I think he's done really well. his coaching tree is not great either, but he's got 3. Shula's got 3. He probably won't. I mean, Belichick might not touch Shula's wins if he doesn't get back in the game. So, and that's where I was. So I think, and again, for me, Shula, Landry, Knoll, you want to move them around. I think you could make arguments for any 3 of those guys, any one of those guys moving to 4 or 5. Like, there's arguments to be made there, but that's where I have them.
See, if you're going to put me in a position where I have to rank, all those guys are going to be at the bottom on their way out, not on their way at the top. And the reason for that is at least to me, when you start talking about coaching specifically, you start talking about, like Pinky said, the modern era.
So
that's a big deal because once free agency actually started, it became a very different situation for coaches. So when you talk about Lombardi, his roster was set. Those guys weren't going anywhere. They weren't playing for another team. If they wanted to play, it was for the Packers or nothing. Same with Paul Brown and the Cleveland Browns. Same with Hallis and the Bears. Same with Landry and the Cowboys. Same with Lombardi and the Packers. Before free agency, those guys got talent, and then that was it. And you got to keep it and build on it, and there was nothing they could do about it. If they didn't want to play for you, they didn't play at all. So while I think they were really good coaches because all of them were able to put their own type of dynasty, if you will, together, guys that can win multiple in the modern era or maintain a consistent level of winning in the modern era hold a little bit more weight to me. So that's why I have a Tomlin in there. That's why my honorable mentions are the Landrys and such. So that modern era, that free agency and dealing with the salary cap and all those things that come with it, that holds a lot more weight for me for a coach that can maintain that greatness and maintain the ability to get the best out of his players when they do have options and continue to win and build.
So, I mean, Landry made the playoffs for like 15 straight years. 2 Super Bowls, lost 2 Super Bowls. Chuck Noll's got 4. He was 4 for 4.
I get it. Noll was
dominated the 70s.
Noll was in my top 10. So easy, buddy. I'm just saying, if we're going to talk about it, the guys that had to go through a little bit more diversity and difficulty, if you will, hold a little bit more weight for me.
But you could also say if those coaches don't draft well and coach well, then they're shit because they don't have free agency to try to make themselves better. If they miss on their draft picks, they're done. That's the game. That's the game that how it was played back then. If you missed on your draft picks or you couldn't coach them up properly, you were done.
Right, but there is also a level of, hey, don't pick me because I won't play for you. I'll go work in the steel mill. And that was okay because you got paid the same. That happened back then. So
not in the 70s it didn't. Ball players were making a good enough money that they weren't doing that.
You know what
60s,
I mean, though.
60s, yeah. I mean, 60s, they were all working a second job in the offseason.
I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, they had to draft well, and I get that, and that helps. But it's not like drafting now. It's not like what Jimmy Johnson did, like what Robert was talking about earlier. It's not that. It's not Mike Tomlin having bad drafts and still consistently winning somehow.
16 consecutive. I just want to point that out. Consecutive winning seasons.
So I understand what you're saying, Pinky. You're stuck with what you're stuck with. But, you know, there's a reason they were really good because they drafted really good for a couple years straight, and then they just destroyed everybody after that. So I'm not saying the coaches were bad. Not like I said they weren't in my top 100, right? Like, I'm just saying, you know, if we're nitpicking, that's where I have to nitpick is I draw the line there somewhere.
The other guy I had contemplated adding to my list as a honorable mention was George Allen. I don't know if you guys know or remember who George Allen is.
Could you educate me?
So
Educate him.
We got people listening, so get other people
He's primarily famous for coaching the Redskins back in the day, but he was a pretty darn good coach everywhere he coached. He did hate draft picks though. Like he legit would trade all of it. Like he went, I think the Redskins went 8 years without a first round draft pick because he would trade them away for veteran players. So he definitely played a different way to do. Now you couldn't do that. Well, I mean, the Rams kind of did it a little bit, but you really can't get away with doing that in today's game based on salary and things of that nature. But
you cannot get away with that anymore. You can limp through, but you're not.
So everybody loves to say McVay F them picks. George Allen was the first guy that was like F them picks. All right.
So
Cameron, give us some thoughts on coaches of all time while we got you.
Really, one of the ones that I will say that stands out that's not on maybe any of your ones list, and maybe you guys said his name. Again, I apologize. Joe Gibbs. I was a bit surprised that Joe Gibbs.
Yeah, he's on his. He was honorable mention for me.
I mean, he won 3 Super Bowls. So maybe
3 different quarterbacks.
3 different quarter. He's the only he's the only coach that has ever done that. And he's one that we all know the coaching tree is a bit long on the Gibbs coaching tree, but also I feel like it's to a certain extent. This is where it kind of severs off a little bit. Maybe not necessarily in the coaching realm, but obviously with his impact in the racing world. So, I mean, that's not necessarily, maybe not necessarily NFL related, but it's also just as a whole, I feel like Joe Gibbs, has had quite the impact in the sports world. So maybe that does have an impact or it doesn't have an impact. Depends on how you interpret that.
I'd be willing to bet that Gibbs is probably in a good amount of folks' top 10, and if he's not in the top 10 of somebody's list, he's in their top 15, like all time for sure.
There's no doubt he's in the top 10. Frankly, he might even be in the top 12. But I mean, if we're kind of going off of maybe not necessarily honorable mention, I was a bit surprised to necessarily not see him in the top 10 for you, Pinky. I mean, I think he deserves a fair amount of love. Not necessarily top. Not necessarily top 5.
You could almost convince me. You could almost convince me to kick Bill Parcells out and put Joe Gibbs in. I could agree with that for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
I don't think Gibbs wouldn't pass Shanny for me, but I could kick him out for Parcells.
Yeah. One of the names, and I guess I was just I will admittedly say I was just doing some quick research here on this one. But Curly Lambeau is a name that is that I was doing some quick little research on here that was not mentioned, if you will. Obviously, we know Lambeau is famous for Lambeau Field, yeah. So I mean, like Curly Lambeau would be a name to get like truly like old school. I will say though, like I feel like if you're going to be talking about like the golden era of coaching, I feel like it truly was like the Tom Landry eras and the that era of coaching. I feel like was like almost like the golden era of coaching.
Shula, Madden, Landry, Knoll, all in that decade.
I feel like that was almost like the golden era of NFL coaching. Because I feel like even then, when you go into the current state of what the NFL has, I mean, you had the Andy Reids, right? You had the Andy Reids, and you did have Tony Dungy, and I agree. I don't necessarily know, or I don't necessarily think Tony Dungy's in the top 10 per se, but he's one of the greatest coaches of that time. As I kind of have that conversation again, but I mean, you had the Andy Reids of the world, you had the Bill Belichick's of the world. You know what I mean? Like you didn't necessarily have the Landrys, the Shulas, the Maddens, like that rich of history of people that were like, rich in their coaching, pedigree, if you will. And even, the Bill Walshes, right? Like, and the Bill Walshes too. You could even throw within that era, if not maybe a little bit past that. So, I mean, like, I feel like that was like maybe the golden era of coaching. And it'll be really interesting to see if the NFL ever gets back to that. Right? It'll be interesting to see if the NFL ever gets back to that as far as like the golden era of coaching. Because that was, I mean, we use this term every once in a while, possibly with like movies or, possibly like, particular scenes like in Star Wars, but like catharsis. But that was pure like NFL catharsis right there for coaching.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Cam. We'll never get back to that though because of the impatience of money. So because of that, these days the loyalty level very rarely exists.
It is, yeah.
The fact that Andy Reid's winning, so there's a reason he gets to stick around. Mike Tomlin, as we've talked about, is winning, and yet there's talks of him maybe being on a hot seat. Bill Belichick, are people saying the best coach of all time, still wants to coach, and the ownership said, "Nah, we're ready to go a different direction." So if you show the slightest hint of affecting the money in a negative way, they're not going to hesitate to pay you off, whatever that's going to cost them, and move on in the hopes that recoups what they lost. And gain some more. So the likelihood of us ever seeing that kind of loyalty displayed, which is really what it comes down to, your Browns, your Hallises, your Landrys, that become synonymous with certain organizations. Man, like, you got to win and you got to be there a long time. Yeah. Andy Reid, there's a good chance when it's all said and done, people will forget he even coached the Eagles, because there's a good chance the Chiefs to win at least one more, if not multiple more. So he'll be the last of a dying breed, if you will, where he gets associated to one team. Shanahan, maybe, if he sticks with the 49ers and he continues to win and they keep giving him opportunities, maybe it could be another one I see getting that opportunity. But outside of that, it's hard to imagine any other coach in the NFL getting a long-term opportunity.
There's one guy that I feel like is close to being in the conversation, and that's Harbaugh. John.
He won't
Harbaugh.
coach long enough at one place to be in that conversation. Is he a great coach? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd be amazed
he's coached the longest next to Tomlin.
Oh, you're talking about John.
Oh,
Jim.
yeah.
And not Jim. John.
John. Sorry. Yeah.
Admittedly, I had Jim on the brain.
John is great coach, but he hasn't won. That's the problem. He hasn't won.
He won one Super Bowl.
There's a lot of other coaches who coached at one place for a long time, Pinky, and were really good, but they never won. So you're not going to include them in those conversations.
I think he's in the conversation, and he's coached at Baltimore a really long time now.
Shit,
longer than you would
Mike Holmgren won one, and he's not even in the conversation.
Well, but
somebody you could say was a really good coach.
I think the best way to define it is like for Robert, like if he puts Tony Dungy in that conversation, right? Like if he puts Tony Dungy in that conversation, then at that point you're having a conversation for a guy like a John Harbaugh, because once a guy like a Dungy enters that conversation, then someone like a John Harbaugh would enter possibly that conversation as well. But it's like the thing is like it's not so much, again, like it's not so much that we're like hating on this idea that like Harbaugh is like one of the worst coaches of all time. No, he's still considered, right?
He's got a Super Bowl.
Right,
I mean, it's not like I'm saying when I said he didn't win, it's not that he hasn't won.
Exactly.
Just compared to everybody else, he hasn't won.
That's what I'm saying, and that's what I'm saying.
Now, that's kind of foolish for me to say, though, because as we're talking about that, I do have Tomlin in my top 10. Harbaugh's had some little bit of ups and downs here and there.
The thing that's just so impressive about Tomlin, and I will say it until the dogs come home, is just like he's just a measure of consistency. Like that's it.
It is
like
crazy.
It is just, if you could think of maybe the coach, right? I mean, like the coach, and this is even going forward with even like Andy Reid, though. Like, it's just like, if you could maybe rattle off maybe the most consistent coach from, when he first started to where it is now, there's probably no coach that comes to your mind more so than Mike Tomlin, because of his matter of consistency, what he's been able to produce, what he's frankly, and it's not something necessarily that would probably put him in the top 10. But if you think about it, just even from the off the field standpoint, or all the personalities that he even had to deal with, even going back now, that you see that, Antonio Brown has been going, crazy on the timeline and crazy.
That was the perfect hit. Let's be honest.
No, I know. But like, just the fact that like, that's a coach that actually had to deal with Big Ben, Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon Bell on one team. Like, obviously
James
that's
Harrison.
not like James Harris. That's not necessarily going to separate you and possibly putting yourself in the top 10.
A Pouncey twin. Like, we could go on and on with the dysfunction within that locker room.
But just the simple fact that like, that's a guy in terms of coaching. Like, if you were to just strictly talk about like personalities and how he's able to coach, the fact that he was able to coach that and produce what he was able to do, it is so impressive. The resume that he was able to consistently produce week in and week out, season in. Like, he is such an impressive coach. Like, so I really hope that Pittsburgh, and frankly, I think it's actually, if you're actually asking me, I think there's a legitimate conversation to be had of who is the greatest coach in Pittsburgh. I actually think that's a big conversation to be had.
There's only 3, so they've all had success. It's not a.
But it's a legitimate conversation, and that's a longevity. It's a longevity of success. Like, if people feel like Mike Tomlin is maybe the greatest coach of all time, or is it Bill Cowher, or so I feel like it's a legitimate conversation.
Well, with that being said, talking about Tomlin, moving in towards the other topic that we wanted to discuss this week with the NFL.
Yeah.
He's what a lot of people consider a really damn good QB away from being able to win another Super Bowl with that defense and some of the weapons they have on offense potentially. So going through, we want to talk about what's going to be a QB carousel of sorts, because there's a number of free agents that are going to move teams, and then you've got the draft, who's going to replace what they had with something new. So let's go through this list. This is what I put together as QB needy teams, okay? You guys tell me what you think, if I'm right or wrong. And then we'll talk about, I'll move us into the QBs and where I think the first domino and the last domino could potentially lie. So first, QB needy teams. The Patriots. Okay. The Giants. Okay.
Yep.
Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Minnesota.
For sure. Yes.
Did they put Kirk on the free agency?
Yeah, he's a free agent.
Oh, damn.
So Minnesota needs a QB. Chicago. Question mark.
I mean, that one's. I don't even know if we. I mean,
it's still. I would put it in there personally.
Sure.
Washington.
Yes.
I've got a question mark with Washington because I think you could see what Sam Howell could potentially provide you going forward. He had over 4,000 yards, like 30 touchdowns. 25 touchdowns.
I think they're going to reset that, and
I'm just saying.
I agree. Like you could make the argument.
Okay, but we'll say
Marvin Harrison Jr. and be good, but
Tampa.
Yes.
Atlanta.
Signing
Atlanta.
Baker. They're allowing Baker to test free agency. So Tampa, Atlanta, New Orleans, question mark, even though I know Derrick Henry just redid his salary.
Carr.
They're not.
Carr, sorry. Yes, thank you.
They're not getting away from Carr this year for sure.
I know they're not. I'm just saying. Still
doesn't, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Denver.
Mm-hmm.
Vegas.
For sure. Yes.
Seattle.
Yes.
And then kind of a curveball, the Rams, question mark.
The Rams are a question mark, but I don't think they're close enough, like positioning wise in the draft to grab a quarterback. I think they'll just keep rolling Stafford. I think they'll keep trying to make the team better. They had a really good draft last year.
And that's
their draft class was really good.
I don't actually think they're QB needy, but as I thought about it, I could see them snagging potentially, but we'll leave them out of this for now then.
Yeah,
Okay,
I would leave them out just because I think at 19 they're going to keep trying to make their team better.
Let's leave New Orleans out just for the sake of what we're trying to discuss because Carr did redo his contract to add more pieces.
Run through those real quick for me one more time.
I will. I'm going to personally go through this and then...
I think you missed one.
Yeah, so here we go. Patriots, Giants, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, Chicago, Tampa, Atlanta, Denver, Vegas, Seattle.
Yeah, you missed one.
Who?
Tennessee.
No, they're not QB needy. I personally don't see them drafting a QB or going out on the free agent market to get one. They're going to let Will Levis start. He's their QB1. I think that's definitive right now.
Some rumors are swirling that they may trade back.
So that's fair. I kind of understand where you're coming from, Pinky. I don't see it. So let's leave them out of this conversation for the time being as well. Just because they took him last year.
So if I'm going to agree with you, but I feel like even Sam Howell played better football than Will Levis.
I don't disagree with you at all. I think Sam Howell had better weapons and better coaching. So, there's that. I'm not saying Will Levis is necessarily a long-term franchise quarterback by any means. I just don't think Tennessee is in the market right now this year. So, that being said, from my viewpoint, I think none of this changes until the Bears decide what happens with Justin Fields. Now,
correct. That's the domino that needs to fall.
That's the first domino that has to fall. Now, as we talk about all of this, Pinky, how my mind works. I start thinking about something like this. I run through a million different scenarios, Doctor Strange style in Endgame. But keep this thought in the back. Don't hate on this, okay? Don't comment on this even right now. Just keep this little tidbit thought in the back of your mind when we start going through the quarterbacks who are available and the teams that they might fit with. Yes, Justin Fields is the first domino that has to fall. Yes, we all believe pretty much at this point that he's going to get moved. I think that's kind of the general consensus. And there's a lot of reasons why that's good. You can argue there's a lot of reasons why that's bad. But I have now a couple different times, Pinky, and this is crazy but true, a couple different times with me going through my scenarios where the Bears play too many games, mess around, and find out, and they still have Fields come the draft. In which case, Fields would still end up on their roster, and they'd have to decide if they want to try to trade him still going into or during the season and take Caleb Williams or roll with him. I'm not saying it's likely, Pinky, and I'm not saying to comment on it right now. I'm just saying keep that little tidbit in the back of your mind here because as we start going through these quarterbacks and where they fit, I've ran into a couple different scenarios where the Bears get stuck and screw themselves.
There is zero chance he's on the roster in 2 weeks.
I'm just saying. Okay.
He will be before free agency. He is traded.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think the general manager said today that they are expected to make a decision. What is it? This week or next week or something like they're expected to make their decision in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
the trade talks are happening this week at the combine.
Right now with the combine going on, absolutely. I'm just saying the Bears being the Bears could F around and find out and screw themselves. And we'll see how here in a little bit.
That's true.
First quarterback I want to talk about, Mr. Kirk Cousins. Give your thoughts. I'll be back in a moment. Kirk Cousins.
I mean, That's an easy one. He needs to re-sign in Minnesota. That's the
Yeah.
best place for him.
Absolutely.
Now-
There isn't going to be a better home for him.
Now, I have a good fit for him, and that's in Atlanta.
I
They've
don't
got weapons. They just really need a quarterback. If they really had a competent quarterback, I do think they're a playoff team. They would win that NFC South easy.
I mean, I would love to see Kirk Cousins with those types of weapons in Atlanta. But I will admit, I feel like his best destination, is probably in Minnesota. But I mean, based on who he is and his style, I'm not necessarily going to come out and say that I'm biased and everything. But I feel like as far as if you're looking at a prototypical quarterback, and we're throwing money out of the equation, and we're just talking about like perfect match, right? Because I really don't.
We're
think
not talking salary caps or anything like that. Just
Yeah.
we think would be the best match for fit
Yeah,
and
exactly.
win and things of that nature.
Exactly. So I'm just strictly talking perfect match. I feel like if you put Kirk Cousins with Sean Payton, that's in essence a perfect match for what he would want at a quarterback. I feel like if you're talking a perfect match, Kirk Cousins in Denver is the perfect match. Do I think, again, and this is why I want to at least throw the salary cap in here, because that's going to be the follow-up for people in the chat. It's not going to happen. Like, it's not going to happen. But I would love to see him in Atlanta, as you said, Pinky. I would love to see.
It can happen. Side note, Cam, it can happen if you really want it to. Salary caps are a magic number.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we just had great episode. Not to go on a little mini bunny trail, but
Really
great
good.
episode. Not to go on a mini bunny trail, but if you guys get a chance to catch a special edition, mainly a Broncos episode that happened last night with Stephen Chris, go check that episode out. It was a great breakdown. It was a great breakdown of how the Broncos could possibly get to 60 million over the cap, and I should say in cap space with just a few moves here and there. So it was pretty incredible.
So
Anyway.
I like the. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, but as far as the Falcons are concerned, like I would love to see that from a team and quarterback perspective, just because I'd love to see that with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, now that they released Jonnu Smith, and the Kyle Pitts owners are rising from the grave, in the sense of like what they can possibly do, with Kyle Pitts. But you got Bijan Robinson there, you got Drake London there, you got, obviously as I said,
Good old line.
Yeah, so like you put Cousins there, that'd be great. I still, at the end of the day, I agree with you, Pinky. His best fit is probably Minnesota. But again, like the thing that's going to push Cousins over that is like, I don't know if Minnesota wants to give him that fully guaranteed contract again. And I really don't. I really don't think it's going to happen.
Minnesota's best option is to either completely tear it down, which means trading Justin Jefferson, or re-signing Kirk Cousins. That's Minnesota's best option. Kirk Cousins' best option is Pittsburgh. I fully believe you put Pittsburgh and Kirk Cousins together, you are looking at a Super Bowl contender.
I don't like that fit at all.
You're looking at a Super Bowl contender.
I mean,
I fully believe it. Now,
that
Atlanta's
O-line's still pretty
interesting
bad. It's not
because
great.
you're going through the NFC, so they could be
rebuild it this
interesting.
year, though.
Yeah, but you're still in a tough division. Like
So
that
what?
division's pretty tough. Like
I'm so tired of hearing this. Oh, it's the AFC. Oh,
I'd
it's
still
the
put
division.
put them third in the division, even with Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, but Pinky, we should know that
they made the playoffs this year without a quarterback. Like, let's be clear what they did this year.
But
they have talent at the weapon positions.
Yeah.
I love Kirk Cousins in Pittsburgh.
And just real quick to piggyback up what you're saying, Caleb, we have to stop this, like in this thing, because we ran into this a little bit too, Pinky, with the AFC West. Like, oh, like Patrick Mahomes is in the AFC West. Why would anybody want to come to the AFC West? Freaking Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton are in the AFC West now. Like, it's just like, so I mean, like it's gonna happen where like at the end of the day, the player wants to go where he feels it's the best fit for him his future and longevity, possibly, like, for that organization. So, I mean, I like the idea of possibly like Cousins with Pittsburgh. And frankly, if I'm actually, Cousins, I'm going to Pittsburgh. And frankly, if I'm viewing Pittsburgh in general, I wouldn't hate the possibility of even stashing Pickett away, having him learn under Kirk Cousins. Because I do like the fact of at least having the idea of Pickett learning under Kirk Cousins for, a few years. Screw the Mason Rudolph idea. Screw the Mitchell Trubisky idea. But I mean, like, I like the idea of Cousins.
So I don't think it's an awful idea of Kirk Cousins at Pittsburgh. I just don't think it's the best fit for him.
All right, so
I don't think they want to give up. I don't think they're that.
We got a lot to do here.
You shut your mouth when I'm talking to you, Caleb.
We got a lot to do, not a ton of time. So we got to move away from Kirk Cousins. But keep in mind what I told you to keep in your mind, and then we just took one of the potential Justin Fields landing spots away. Whether it's Atlanta or Pittsburgh, we just took one of the top 2 Justin Fields landing spots, at least rumored, away. So just, okay, keep it in mind. We kind of all agree Atlanta is nice. Some of us like Pittsburgh. Just keep it in your mind. Next up, Ryan Tannehill. Do we think he starts anywhere next year?
No.
Agreed.
Funny enough, though, as we were just talking about Pittsburgh, if there is a landing spot for him,
back with Arthur Smith,
it would be with Arthur Smith. But just in the simple fact of like his best years.
Absolutely. I mean, if Pittsburgh swings on misses and every other option that they're trying to do, yeah, I guess I could see that. But yeah, we're all in agreement. Tannehill's not starting anywhere next year. Jacoby Brissett. Does anybody desperate enough to start him next year?
No.
Denver's
going to pick somebody else, man.
I'm actually saying no on that.
I agree. Jacoby doesn't start anywhere next year. Does Geno Smith start anywhere next year?
Yes.
Seattle.
Yeah.
He starts in Seattle.
They already paid him.
You think they get a deal done and he stays in Seattle?
They don't have to get a deal done. He's still under contract. They did a 3-year deal, and by keeping him on the roster like a week or 2 ago, they just guaranteed another $12.5 million.
Okay. My bad. I missed that. Okay, so
he's playing this year. Whether or not they grab another, rookie or whatever, like he's playing this year though.
My bad. Totally misunderstood his situation. Okay, so there's Geno. Baker.
Yes. I think he stays in Tampa. My personal opinion.
I think I'm surprised
they're going to get
free agency.
They're going to get a deal done.
I agree, and I think they're kind of bummed secretly that he was as good as he was because it cost them some draft positions and didn't allow them to then. What is happening?
I don't know. That's not Robert.
Is it?
I don't know. Is it on me? I'm not moving.
Anyways, hopefully we're good. Baker won too much for Tampa, and it then caused them to not be in a position to grab a quarterback in the draft or have a roster really go after one of the top 3 options. Oh my God, we're losing everything.
It's definitely not me.
I'll be back.
Yeah, it's definitely not me.
Yeah, Robert, I think it's you. Robert, you, buddy.
Better?
That's better.
I will Caleb.
Okay, it was definitely Caleb.
My
you
bad.
just hurt the audience. Like everybody is just like, oh,
yeah,
you guys
my
are
bad.
awful.
My bad.
I blame Russell Wilson.
So Baker, we think, gets the deal done in Tampa because. Damn. I'll be back.
All right. Baker is getting a deal done in Tampa. That makes the most sense. I think we can definitely agree on that. That audio issue still happening, boys. It's on Robert. Yep, it's Robert. I think it's Robert, bro.
Was it?
Yeah, and that's a pretty good way of saying it.
Okay, well, so Baker, Tampa, they won too much. They really don't have any other options. Nobody else is going to sign Baker, so they're kind of stuck together, right?
I think Baker's got a little bit of a market. I guess it just depends on what he's looking for.
He also signed an offensive coordinator that at least has familiarity with him. I mean,
what team that is QB needy would you say outside of Tampa would make a run at Baker?
You're going to force me to say it.
You're going to say it. I know you are. I listened to the show last night.
I just know that Sean Payne has been on record in being a Baker Mayfield fan. So I could see Denver being making a run, but also too, like, that's just where Denver is. Like, the fact that Denver is like resetting everything. I'm not going on a massive.
I got another name that I'd rather see in Denver that I'll get to here in a second. But you're talking about Sean Payton rehashing things that he said he's liked. Jameis Winston, does he start anywhere next year?
No. I actually don't think
Agreed. So. Gardner Minshew, does he get a look from anyone?
No. Actually, if there's any place that he starts, it's Indianapolis. Given with what things could possibly stand with Anthony Richardson, do I think that's likely? The answer is no. But I think that if there's
I can see him being there next year and starting the first 3 or 4 games of the season while Richardson is still rehabbing or something. I could see that as a possibility. I don't think it'll happen. Like
he
earned
a raise.
He
earned a raise, and I don't know if Indianapolis was going to want to pay that raise.
Agreed. All right, now Russ is technically not a free agent.
Yep.
It's not me.
Not me.
Is it Robert? What's happening? Am I still echoing? I don't even know if I'm still echoing.
No,
you're not echoing.
Robert, you take that microphone and you throw it in the trash immediately. You burn it with the wrath of furious hellfire. Hopefully we're good. I don't remember what I was going to say now.
I think you were leading with Russ.
Oh, yeah, Russ. So not technically a free agent yet, but there's no way he's staying with the Broncos. Like, there's just no possible way that happens. So there is a very small, tiny, very minuscule possible way, but nobody believes it's going to happen. So
they were very cavalier with talking about their other options.
Russ,
today,
free agent, does he start anywhere next year?
Yes.
So I got 3 spots I think he could start: Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Vegas.
You know, it's funny you say Vegas. I think Jeremy Fowler was one of, if not the first people to mention Vegas as a destination for Russell Wilson. I could see that. I will say I don't think Russ has a vengeful side, but I can see him, liking the idea of playing for a player's coach necessarily, and Antonio Pierce. And I can see him playing for a coach like that with Vegas. So if you take the vengeful side out of that, I can see him playing for a player's coach like that. Funny enough, I could see Pittsburgh. I can see Pittsburgh as an option, given what Arthur Smith has liked in his career. I could see, Pittsburgh certainly as a destination. And depending on I actually have 4, but depending on what they certainly could do. But New England, I would feel like, I would almost roll New England possibly into that. It just falls back onto this whole players coach thing. The idea that, Gerard Mayo is a former player. He's a player's coach. I can see them wanting to possibly go that route. Now, the biggest deterrent of all of that is Russ had maybe the worst game of the entire season against the New England Patriots. And does Gerard Mayo actually want that on, on his team? I don't know. Minnesota would probably be another one. But
if they don't do Cousins, they're tearing it down. They're drafting.
I agree.
Moving
I
up.
agree.
But you have to have a backup though. Like
Yeah, but I don't think they'd go Russ in that situation because you're talking about something in the locker room that maybe not is the best for developing.
I agree.
All that media.
But also,
that whole, not that I believe any of that's true. It's just that tried and true NFL statement that always comes with it. So
I agree with you. Do I? And you know what? And just because I'm going to be psychotic, I'll throw a fifth team in there. But like but the only thing that really puts pause on me for Minnesota is I just don't think he meshes well with Kevin O'Connell. I just don't think he meshes well at all with Kevin O'Connell. The one team I feel like would be fascinating would be Atlanta. But the thing that has hesitance for me on Atlanta is Zach Robinson, former Colorado high school legend, Oklahoma State, quarterback, is the offensive coordinator there. And when you have a young offensive coordinator, that would kind of trigger a little bit that you want to go a little bit younger or a young quarterback necessarily and kind of reset, if you will, from what you had with Desmond Ridder. So that's why it feels like maybe Atlanta maybe wants to go a little bit younger at the quarterback position. But those are kind of like the runarounds, I feel like, for Russ and his options. But I do think
like Russ is like the plan B for everybody.
That's fine. But so plan B, Denver. The last name I have here, I actually think should be, if Sean Payton is truly able to develop quarterbacks, I think this would be a no-brainer for Denver personally, based on age, contract, everything else that can go into it, and potential talent still. And it's really you could play it as a 1-year rental, maybe 2. Sam Darnold with Sean Payton. And that's fine. People want to laugh all they want, but I think he's.
I'm not laughing. Pinky knows. Pinky knows I'm not laughing.
I think he's shown enough flashes that becomes a very interesting option. Now, keep that in mind, because I think Sam Darnold does start somewhere next year. I think he does get a chance or an option in camp to compete for a starting position. And I think there's enough QB needy teams, as we've seen here. I think there's enough QB needy teams where Sam Darnold will start next year.
Actually, there's talk about him going to the Steelers.
Well,
Darnold?
Yeah.
That wouldn't.
There's been a lot of talk about that.
Well, there's talk that the Steelers want a guy to compete, but still want to give Pickett the chance at the job.
Well, Darnold would destroy Pickett's bag. Biggie, you were right. Pickett is awful.
Pickett is awful.
Here's the thing, though. I think Darnold's a risk, yeah, but the Broncos are in no man's land right now. They're trying to rebuild on the fly without rebuilding, which always gets you into a lot of trouble. Now, there's a possibility of them being able to do it if you can find a cheap quarterback that can blossom out of nowhere.
Burn it down.
They should, but they won't. They won't, Pinky, and you know how I feel about burning it down. Let's not go down that road right now, okay? Because they're not going to do it. Darnold fits into the current, what looks like their blueprint perfectly, based on the cost, based on the potential, based on a head coach that can supposedly develop quarterbacks. Denver's other option is drafting one of the guys like a McCaffrey, McCarthy, Penix, or Bo Nix at that middle round of the first. Or wrapping back around to the very beginning of this, sending a first and a third, or a second a second and a third, or maybe a second this year and a third next year or something, to Chicago for Justin Fields. Because as we just laid out, if Pittsburgh and Atlanta go different directions because they scoff at what Chicago's asking price is to trade for Fields, and they decide to go with keeping their draft picks and adding a veteran QB, where does Fields land? Now,
Yeah.
Denver should have drafted him to begin with. I still fully believe that, but that also maintains that they had to completely redo the coaching staff at the same time, and they weren't willing to do that, which is why they made the pick that they made. Could Fields end up back in Denver for a somewhat cheap price?
No.
Now, Pinky and I have talked about this. If Sean Payton truly is the quarterback guru whisperer that he believes he is, and he is that, Darnold is a really solid option.
Mm-hmm.
But Fields might be even more intriguing because Sean Payton told the entire league he can build an offense around Taysom Hill's abilities and then win with it. Well, Justin Fields would be Taysom Hill on crack. So if Sean Payton really believes that and he can do that, Justin Fields to the Broncos might actually be the sleeper that nobody's talking about, and they should be. Because the two options that everybody keeps getting him to, Atlanta and Pittsburgh, maybe don't want to give up the draft capital because of where they're at, and they could see themselves winning and getting to the playoffs with a couple other pieces, and they want to go the free agent veteran QB market. So, Pinky, that's where I said this now becomes where Atlanta could F around and find out, because if Denver also says, nah, we don't want that project, or we don't want to give that up because we know we have a lot of pieces that we have to fill with holes, then where does Fields end up? What does Chicago do? So that's where I think it could get real interesting really fast, especially if we don't hear Fields' name traded in the next week. Maybe you could push it out 2, but if we go past 2 weeks and Fields isn't traded, I think we start looking at this being a real option.
It's got to get done before the start of free agency.
I know.
Yeah.
It's kind of where it's got to happen. And none of the things you said do I disagree with, Caleb.
Cheers.
That doesn't happen often. Is that an intriguing option? Yes. Does Denver have the trade assets to even entertain that? No, they don't. They don't have a second this year. So the Bears would have to take a second next year. They're not giving up a first for Justin Fields. So, like, I don't think Denver's even
right.
the option. And I don't think I think Sean Payton's going to want a guy that operates in the pocket, throws quick passes, those 10, 15-yard passes. I don't think he's going to want a guy that's inconsistent throwing the ball in those areas. Not that Justin proved this year he can make some good throws. He absolutely could. The consistency was still shaky at times. I just don't think he's going to take on that type of project. I don't.
So going back here real quick, and then Robert, Cam, jump in here. We think Cousins starts somewhere next year. We think Wilson does find a starting role, whether he maintains it or not. We think he finds one. Fields will be starting somewhere. Geno is obviously going to be with Seattle. Baker, we think, will be down in Tampa. Minshew and Winston, nothing. Brissett, nothing. Tannehill, probably nothing. Do we think Darnold finds a starting place next year, even if it's not with the Broncos, like I think is a good fit?
I think he's back up.
I actually don't think he's starting, but yeah,
I think he's competing or backup.
Okay. I think he's got to find the right situation.
Yeah.
I think San Francisco is definitely that. It's just Purdy is really good.
Yeah.
And he was healthy. And I think they signed Darnold in the thoughts that Purdy may not be healthy, and they wanted somebody who Shanahan thought he could roll with.
And could Darnold come play for the Broncos? Sure. That's like, there's nothing wrong with that idea.
Look, Pink, you know how big of a Fields guy I am, right? We know how I felt about them not drafting him and everything since. I actually, putting that aside, that whole conversation and the disdain I have for what was done, putting that aside, I think the Broncos' better option, I think their best option actually going forward QB-wise is Sam Darnold. And I know I'm a Sam Darnold guy, blah, 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 blah. But given the landscape and who our head coach is and what pieces we have, I don't see how that's not the best option.
I don't hate it, but I'll just roll with Stidham and just suck. That's what I want to do. I'll roll with Stidham and suck.
So I feel like now's a good time. Caleb, if you had a chance, and I'm sure Pinky did, but if you had any chance to listen to 5280's podcast or Mainly's, you will be pleased to know that the Sam Darnold tune is welcome to my ears, because Sam Darnold to Denver has actually been the thing that I've been trying to push over here at the network. Not necessarily from a, he's going to be starting week 1, but I want to produce the best quarterback room, and that's on that football team. And I think that, and the point that I've always said is I think that Sean Payton, he signed Jarrett Stidham in mind for this year in mind. And I mean, he signed him to a very large deal, if you will. It was like $10 million a year, which even include this year. It was a rather large contract for what people were calling as a backup quarterback, which raised a lot of eyebrows. It raised a lot of eyebrows. So I feel like he had this year in mind in terms of Jarrett Stidham. And so I feel like Jarrett Stidham, is probably going to end up being your starter. That's kind of what I'm rolling with in my prediction. He will probably be starting week 1. Ben DiNucci will not be on your roster. That's kind of what I'm rolling with come week 1. Ben DiNucci will not be on the roster. He will be in training camp, but he will not be on the roster. Meaning your quarterback room will end up being Jarrett Stidham, Sam Darnold, because I mean the point that needs to be brought up with Sean Payton is he loves reclamation projects. You don't need to look no further than Jameis Winston as a player that you mentioned on that free agency market. I mean,
Taysom Hill was a reclamation project on his own team.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think that it's pretty obvious.
You watch your mouth, Carter. I will stop everything right now. Burn this down. You watch your tone, sir. You watch it right now.
Carter, I love you, buddy. I totally wore this for Pinky, for Pinky's sake. And obviously, I wore for Caleb also because Caleb is a fellow Husker. But in spite of the fact that Pinky just is a unfortunate Miami Hurricanes fan, I decided to, wear the number that Dylan Raiola wore when he committed to Nebraska on his visit. So, anyway, but as far as Sean Payton, he loves reclamation projects, and you don't need to look no further than Jameis Winston, as you said, possibly even Taysom Hill. But it's just like I think that, he's such a fascinating prospect in the sense of like he's a low risk, high reward signing. And it's one that you bring him in the room. He's only 26 years old. Like he is only 26 years old. And so you bring him into the room, and anybody that was blowing on my mentions, saying like, oh, Sam Darnold is going to cost, 10, 12, 14, 15 million a year. It's like, dude, either you don't know math or you don't know the landscape of the NFL, because Sam Darnold is not going to be signing that length of a deal unless he is guaranteed that he's going to be starting week 1. He's going to be signing probably a 1 year, maybe even a 2 year, but it's only going to end up being like a 3 to 5, basically almost like a 2 to 5 year deal, if you will, to wherever it is that he's going to go. So I'm saying, he's going to go to the Broncos, but that's not the important thing is like, that's not going to rule you out from possibly drafting your quarterback, possibly. And I use that in air quotes. So that's not going to rule you out from possibly taking your quarterback. So that's not going to rule you out from 12. Go take your JJ McCarthy's. Go take your Bo Nix's. Go take your Michael Penix. Take that swing that you fall in love with quarterback at 12. I don't care whether or not I love the quarterback. If you fall in love with the quarterback at 12, take that quarterback at 12. Fall in love with that quarterback. Take that quarterback. And then right now you have one of the greatest quarterback rooms that you can possibly have that you can evaluate from a young perspective with J.J. McCarthy in the room, Sam Darnold in the room, Jarrett Stidham in the room to at least hold the fort down for at least a couple games. And then at that point, you can evaluate it from the standpoint of, okay, Sam Darnold versus this guy. And if Sam Darnold can't beat out this guy, or if this guy can't beat out Sam Darnold, then maybe Sam Darnold is the one that has the goods. Because I mean,
So,
again,
Cam, the only way that works is if they burn it down. The only way that let's
Oh,
get this,
no,
this
not necessarily,
awesome quarterback room thing going is you can't do that in the NFL. There is a tried and true cliche. If you have two quarterbacks in the NFL, you have none. That is a true conversation topic.
you don't need to tear it down, though.
You have to. If you're going to do what you're talking about and draft a quarterback in the first round and sign Sam Darnold as a reclamation possibility project, you can't do both and not tear it down. You can't. That's a waste of a pick.
That's
Because if you think Sam Darnold's a reclamation project, you should be filling all the other holes you have. And there's a lot of them. So you don't get a reclamation project and not address any holes and get another quarterback. That puts you in the same situation you've been in the last couple of years and even worse.
Not necessarily. Because
So-
the one thing, because again, I will say it till the dogs come home. One of the things the Broncos ever did wrong, and it was to my own fandom, I was stupid enough to fall in love with it. The things that they were so wrong for over the years, I had no qualms with this idea of them going out and signing Case Keenum. I had no qualms for them possibly signing in, or trading for possibly these guys of the Joe Flacco's of the world, who apparently entered his prime just a little bit later than John Elway actually, promised us. But but the whole point there is that you had no backup plan, or not necessarily a backup plan, but you had no guy behind you, right? The whole point of a Joe Flacco, a Case Keenum, is a bridge to that next guy, right?
Right, and I agree, but that's what I'm saying. Darnold's not a bridge. Darnold is either the plan or he's not. So don't waste a pick if you think he's going to be the plan.
But the whole point of Darnold is he is a low risk, high reward, meaning you can easily move on from him. You can easily ditch him if you want to.
Right, absolutely. But that's why you would use that higher pick on positions of need: offensive line, defensive line, wide receiver is a position of need. Running back, you could argue, is a position of need. Not saying you're going to take it that high. Linebacker is a position of there's so many holes that if you're going to go with this low risk, high reward, potential remake project, everything else that is Sam Darnold, you're not going to take that quarterback, because the idea of a bridge quarterback is you have somebody almost as a mentor-ish to who you draft. Darnold's not looking to be a mentor to anybody. That's not how that works. This is the other last thing I'll throw out here, and this will be my final thought. I think a very interesting potential for Sam Darnold also is the New York Giants.
Possibly.
With Daboll and what Daboll was able to do with Josh Allen, the fact that Daniel Jones cannot stay healthy, and I could easily see them moving on from him. We're talking about people who could possibly do a reclamation project. Daboll, with the pieces they're trying to put together there in New York, I could actually see that working out with him and Darnold. And Darnold, maybe he can get his old place back.
Mm-hmm.
So
Robert, what are your thoughts, Robert? You haven't talked in
Robert,
10
give
minutes.
us your final thoughts.
So some of my big final thoughts that have come from this conversation, because I haven't watched the QB Carousel as much. The only one that I was really following was the Fields and Wilson one. But really piqued my interest was Kirk Cousins going to the Broncos. And I was actually going to bring this up. If that happens, I will be buying myself a Cousins Broncos jersey. Done. So it won't happen, but if it does, that will happen.
I love it.
I've followed Cousins since he was the backup for RG3. I've loved Cousins since he was with the Redskins. I mean, he was a Spartan.
We know why you love him.
Yeah,
so, but no, with him being in the free agency, with potentially the Vikings doing a lot of changes with Justin Jefferson, I'm very curious to see how that whole room works out now. Because I thought the Vikings have had a pretty strong last couple of years, but now who knows what that means.
What?
Love it. Cam, final thoughts.
Well, it's such a fascinating thing for me with Kirk Cousins, because it's like Kirk Cousins could possibly go from a lot of options to not a lot of options really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the thing that I'm really curious of with Kirk, because especially like, let's just say for the sake of argument that, this rumor is true that just came out, possibly within the last hour to 2 hours, in terms of the Atlanta Falcons emerging as the number one destination for Justin Fields. Like, let's just say that that's, for the sake of argument, is true, right? And if any of you guys have not been following that just kind of broke within the last couple hours, that Fields and the Falcons seem to be like a destination right now, or the number one
to him, so it would make sense.
Yeah.
That's his top destination.
But like, let's just say that's off the board. So you're talking about number 8, right? I think the Falcons have number 8, right? Number 8 would be off the board.
Yeah.
Which would be appropriate. As I said earlier, Zach Robinson, he's a young offensive coordinator. You would want a young quarterback in that room, whether that's Justin Fields or possibly whoever you're going to draft at 8. So that seems to be rather appropriate. That would leave New England necessarily and Minnesota. I mean, the only other team that I would probably roll into that mix is Washington. But Washington, when you have the number 2 overall pick, it seems like you're kind of hell bent on this idea that you're going to be wanting to take, your quarterback at 2. Don't
forget the Raiders.
Well, see, the Raiders, I just don't see Cousins fitting with the Raiders necessarily. I like the idea of him using or being a bridge, if you want to call it that, to Aiden O'Connell. I mean, Caleb and I know Aiden O'Connell quite well with Purdue. He would at least be a decent enough like bridge for a guy like an O'Connell, but I can't see the Raiders doing that. The only reason why I would necessarily throw Washington in the mix, they have a ton of money to spend. And if they certainly want to possibly, sign Cousins to that big money deal, they can do it. They can sign him. They can frankly draft Marvin Harrison Jr. at 2. You can load up a very underrated wide receiver room if you wanted to. I mean, so I can see that it's a possibility. The only thing that even pushes back on that is, like, does Kirk Cousins want to go back to Washington, right? Which is why I feel like Washington's either going to take a guy like a Jaden Daniels or a Drake May. Like, those are the 2 options I feel like they're going to probably lean towards. So again, you're going more so to this idea of like, it's really Minnesota or where else? Like, like, it's truly like Minnesota or where else? I mean, I know you had mentioned Pittsburgh, right? Like, possibly. But it's just like, I'm really curious about this Kirk Cousins domino, because like, if it happens that way, you're talking about a guy who, even if he goes, and this is the other part of the domino, if he goes to Minnesota, I don't think that's even taking them out of the conversation still of them taking a quarterback at pick 11. I really don't.
It's not for sure.
Yeah.
Pinky, answer that question. I'll let you answer it. We'll all let you have it. Give your final thoughts, and we'll wrap it up.
I think Sam Howell's intriguing for sure. I think a lot of teams would be willing to take a swing at adding Sam Howell to their quarterback room. Doesn't cost you a whole lot. He's still got 2 years left on his contract based on him being a 4th or 5th round pick, I believe. So that's really a low risk, high reward type of signing. He put up some damn good numbers, and that's with a really bad O-line. Like, that Washington O-line was bad. So you could even make the case, like, keep Sam Howell, trade 2, get back a couple, still pick up Harrison or Odunze or Neighbors or Brock Bowers or whoever offensive weapon you like at 5, 6, or wherever you end up. But you keep building up that, and then you've still got a guy, but new team, new coach, new ownership. I could see them getting the guy that's going to put a top 2 quarterback pick is going to put butts in the seats, right?
Final thoughts, my guy.
Man, the quarterback carousel is crazy. Cousins and Fields are probably the 2 that really we want to see where those guys end up, because I think those are the 2 guys that are really like the options. Like I feel like Cousins for some teams will be option 1 and Fields will be option 2. For some teams, Fields is option 1 and Cousins could be option 2 if Minnesota's made that decision. Because again, Cousins really good top end quarterback. It's just the money. It's just, do you want to pay a guy, $45 million a year for 2-3 years? A lot of teams don't want to do that.
Well, and the other thing too for Cousins that's kind of like an underrated point, and whether that falls into Denver's category, whether that falls into Pittsburgh's category, or back into Washington's category, he's 35 years old. He could be looking at his forever home now. Like he could be looking at his as the place that he wants to retire. So I mean, like
he's also coming off an Achilles injury, so there's a lot of question marks around
current weapons and what they have and kind of what they're looking at. If they're not going to blow it up like they should, because again, I feel like this team's in the same spot as the Broncos, the Raiders. Competent quarterback play from the Raiders could definitely help, but they need to blow it up.
We could hash this out, and we'll continue to hash it out over the next couple of weeks. Gentlemen, it is always a pleasure. I love chatting with you and chopping it up. Cam, thanks for the surprise appearance. Pinky, Robert, you're my boys. You're my boys. To everybody else that participates, likes, shares, follows, spends any amount of their free time listening to us, we truly appreciate it. We cannot thank you enough. Do not take that time with your loved ones for granted. The inner circle, family, friends, whatever you consider it, cherish those moments. We appreciate all of you. Till next Tuesday. Cheers.
See ya.
We're out.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down 'cause the